Red chairs? Absolutely. Red surfboards? Rad. Red stripe? Delish. Red sign? Self-explanatory. Red flags? Nope.
Everybody, this is Barbara Clark with Talent Acquisition Team, and we are talking about red flags today. 2021 has been a crazy year. We've had COVID, we've had the Great Resignation, and now we have the Great Reset. It's a wonderful time for us to kind of pause, breathe, and re-examine some of our hiring practices. I know there's been great pressure on recruiters and on hiring managers to get people in the door. We're always worried we're going to lose candidates, and sometimes we do, to other offers as the process is moving so quickly. I myself am guilty of moving too quickly sometimes and overlooking that inner voice that is sometimes telling me like, hey, let's give this candidate a second look. There is something that may not be the best fit for Bureau Veritas. So I'm challenging us as we move into 2022 to look at our hiring practices, to look out for some of the red flags that exist that we are aware of but may not be at the forefront of our mind as we're examining every candidate. Sometimes someone just is coming in hot and has another offer and we know it and we feel the pressure, or there's a high need fill that we just need some boots on the ground. So what do we look out for? What are some of the things that we all know? Time is probably one of them. Being respectful of time, being on time for interviews. If a candidate is going to be delayed, letting the hiring manager or the recruiter know so that we can reschedule. But if there's no cognizance or awareness of time and folks are late, that's a red flag that they may be late for deadlines, or they may miss client meetings, or just not be respectful of the client's time as well. The next thing, and I know I'm guilty of this in my personal life, is talking too much. And I have to be aware and think sometimes, all right, this is a game of tennis. We're gonna volley and return. And if a candidate is talking too much during the interview and not being concise with their answers, that's a red flag that they're not exhibiting the emotional intelligence we might need them to exhibit, which is also going to be reflected in client interactions or interactions with other team members. Another thing could be examples. If a candidate isn't able to give any examples of how they've handled a situation, either a difficult situation or some client engagement, then that would be a red flag too, that they potentially don't have the experience that we need them to have and aren't able to provide concrete examples. Gaps in employment are no longer what they used to be. So there has never been a better time to have a gap or have some time where you've been out of the workforce, because COVID has been a little bit of a blanket in those situations, although we still need to dive deep and figure out, were they continuing to learn? Were they taking some online classes if they got laid off? Was there an effort to remain relevant? Additionally, if there are longer gaps, we're always very supportive of taking care of elderly family members or a sick child or illness themselves. We just need a really good explanation and don't want folks to kind of hide things under the rug. We versus I. So it's always fine to talk about efforts with team members and things that we've done as a group, but we also want to make sure that candidates are giving us some I examples, some things they've accomplished themselves and not just kind of resting on group efforts. Salary. If folks are kind of pressing and counter offering and we're not quite able to get them where they need to be, then they may not be happy with the final offer, and we have to always be aware that they may be putting one foot in our door but leaving one foot out there to try to continue to look for the role that is going to supply them with the salary that they need. So really digging a little deeper, and that goes for RN2 as recruiters, and making sure that we're not putting folks in the seat that really aren't happy with the salary that we've had to offer. We have lost some folks lately that were barely with us, and then Zoom, they've got kind of the offer that they were really needing. Lying, happens. Folks aren't always honest on their resume. They're not always honest about their work experience or what we've found this year with education. Our HR department does a really good job with onboarding and verifying many things, including education. So we're the first step as recruiters to make sure that we are verifying that the education that they have is what they're representing on paper. Even then, that's not always the case, and sometimes folks are lying about that as well. That's an obvious red flag. Sometimes we can also see discrepancies on the resume and on their social media platforms as far as how they're representing their work experience, their longevity, their tenure, and some of their associations, even certifications as well. No homework. I'm looking for folks to do their prep work, and as recruiters, we do lead them a little bit to the water, but we need them to finish the job. And so if folks haven't gone on our website, if they haven't looked up a little bit of information about the division and the department, if they haven't reviewed the job description, which is readily available to them in their confirmation once they schedule an interview, if they haven't done that, that's letting me know that they're just treating this as another interview or another job and really not necessarily invested in us and what we do. Always an obvious one, bad-mouthing your hiring manager, bad-mouthing your previous supervisor, bad-mouthing your company. We all know things go on behind the scenes that aren't always kosher, and we are looking for folks to be professional, not dive deep into problems or issues that they might have had in their previous employer, and be extremely professional. Vague answers are also a question mark. So if folks are, I'm great at sales, or I'm an amazing team player, well, we need a little bit more. And so if someone's only providing vague answers, that may tell us they're not qualified for the position or potentially just not interested in the position. Having no questions for me, having no questions for you, the hiring manager. If folks truly aren't interested in the position, then maybe they're not bringing anything to the table as far as questions they might have. After hearing you talk and engaging in some really good back and forth, that should also generate a few things in their mind. So that would also be a red flag to me. Also, for many of our roles, we're looking for folks to have executive presence. And that doesn't mean they're going to be in an executive position or they're going to, be a division director or an SVP. But if they're client facing and they're going to be interacting, representing Bureau Veritas, we want to really pay attention to how they're communicating during the interview. Are they using like or or fillers, or not confident, or not making good eye contact, even though it's hard now that we're using video interviews for the most part, although we are migrating to face-to-face for many of our divisions for final interviews. But we're looking for that presence and that articulation and that confidence and just really good communication, because this individual is going to be representing Bureau Veritas. What we do want, so we've talked about some of the negatives. What do we want in candidates? We want enthusiasm, and even in a video or in a phone interview, you can hear a smile. You can tell when someone's talking, but when they're smiling, you can hear that. That's contagious, and we want that enthusiasm coming to the table. We all want to work with people that we would also like to hang out with and that we think are decent people. Culture is important. We also want people to articulate their value. Why do we want to hire you? What are you bringing to the table? What's exciting about you? What's exciting about your experience? Let us hear some of your passion. Take responsibility for some of your previous mistakes in your stories. Talk about how you've grown. Talk about things that you're doing to grow in general as an individual, as a team member. What have you done if you've had employment gaps? Have you been learning another language? Have you been coding? Have you been teaching yourself some skills that are relevant to the workforce? Finally, give me a really good 10,000-foot view of your resume. Don't go on and on. That's part of the too much talking, but take me through it. Why you went here, why you studied this, maybe you changed majors. Were you a D1 athlete? I know that was something, I was a D1 runner, and that was something that when I was a new a new hire in my very first job, I was trying to talk about how hard it was to connect all the dots with studying and practices and traveling and staying organized. So taking through the resume all the way to the top with some of the decisions that we've made. Also, having some great questions, being engaged. So as we kind of recalibrate and move into the Great Reset, we are hopefully going to take a breather and still hire at the pace we've been hiring at, but make some good decisions, watch out for those red flags, and pay attention to our inner voice. So we've had some misfires. I don't like to call them bad hires, misfires, it happens. And now it's time for the reset. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions anytime, and thanks for listening, and sorry for my not so great video skills. It is not my forte. Have a good one.